I'm Bhavidhir V. Bharadwaj. Welcome to episode 47 of Genesis of Tomorrow. The following is going to be a conversation about cybersecurity, technology, cryptography, and so much more with Mr. Sanjay Katkar, the co founder and chief technology officer of QuickHeal, who is now currently serving as the joint managing director and the former chief technology officer at Seqrite. Also, folks, if you're interested in such deep science and deep tech conversations and are able to derive even the slightest bit of value from the show, please support us by clicking the subscribe button so that we can keep improving the quality of the episodes and keep on bringing such wonderful guests over for you. And now, without any further ado, let's get right into it. Enjoy and thank you. Of different points, tangents that I want to hit in this conversation with you. But I think one of the most potent ones again comes from the very start. And I know you've talked about this a lot, but again, the early
Mhm.
days of Quick Heal, the mindset. I want to know the breakthroughs that you guys collectively faced, and most importantly, the unexpected curveballs that you overcame.
Yes, yes. So, when we started QuickHeal back in the early days, like around 90s, cybersecurity wasn't even a mainstream word, I'll say. We were just fighting computer viruses, tiny but nasty programs that would bring down systems. So what kept us going was a mindset of curiosity and persistence. I'll say we had no blueprint or no playbook or nothing at such a big plans. I'll say we were learning while we were building. So every breakthrough felt like a survival mode for us at that time. I still remember the first time we cracked a polymorphic virus. It was kind of magic for me actually, and that no one else in India could solve was a pride moment for me, and it was unexpected, but it gave us a sense of yes, we can actually make a difference. And if you see uh, from there the whole game kept evolving. We moved from say signature based detections to polymorphic, and then gradually making it more proactive, something much more dynamic with machine learning applications and all that. So uh, cybersecurity as such was kind of evolving as a whole ecosystem, or I'll say a market altogether. But what really took us by, I mean, like what really took us by surprise was the number of threats that grew when the internet opened up. If you see, when I started, it was like 93. I started developing solutions means as a hobby from my college days itself. But when we actually launched QuickHeal as the first version, that was 95. But in India at that time, internet was not yet there. Actually, we were whatever I was doing, I was studying through books, and means that was the only source of information for me. And by self exploration is the majority of the learning that I have done. But what I realized was viruses were like gradually coming. We used to spread with you through floppies. People used to share games or something like that, and gradually they used to spread. So I used to see, I'll say, a new virus once a month, and some in few days it started in early 6 7 months only. It started happening a new virus once a week, and I was pretty much okay with that. But then as internet happened, initially it happened like we India saw a dial-up internet connection with VSNL announcing internet, and people started using email as the first connectivity through internet. Internet was not directly used by consumers, but very large organizations were using internet because it was costly, and then gradually it started spreading with a smaller and much easier packages available for VSNL. Everybody started to connect. People started buying PCs only for internet access, and then the number of threads grown like anything. Like it went up exponentially. We started seeing few threads per week to few hundred threads per week,
Hmm.
and in a short span, a couple of years time, it went from hundreds to thousands per week. And now if you see, the count is like we see more than means almost 500,000 threads, unique threads per day. So that's the That's the exponential growth that has happened into the number of threats, and it's like all because of different reasons. But then it has evolved to the level where it has become a big and much challenging cybersecurity problem, I'll say here.
There are two threads that I would want to independently take up from here. First one,
Mm-hmm.
maybe starting with again,
Mm-hmm.
you begin in this area of cybersecurity of your own volition, right? A normal undergrad
Right.
student just coming across something that seems fascinating, and then you pick it up and start from there. In the
Right.
era where online courses and online resources, so much and so forth, weren't available, let alone plausibly or viably available, they weren't available.
Yeah, internet was not there, so online was not a scope at all, actually.
Yes, I mean, how? How did that mechanism for learning varied from for you then to versus what you see it having evolved to right now?
Yeah, so as I said, the learning during that time was more exploratory, in the sense my time was consumed more into understanding how operating system was designed, how the file systems are designed, and then how this intelligent code when for viruses they used to stay in memory and they used to infect newer floppies. So my curiosity went on with that, like how the memory is divided, how the program stays in memory, all this actually. And that learning was through books. From books I used to get some help from like how the file system is designed, or how network works, or how memory is managed. But then nowhere I could find information on how a virus intercepts the calls, how virus takes control of the computer. Those things I had to explore on my own. And gradually I learned, I did, and I made my own notes, and I through my notes I taught a lot of guys in college as well at that time. And then gradually I built a team to help me because the threats were growing. But if you compare from them that time to now, now it is a completely evolved and much mature ecosystem where I'll say information sharing is the much bigger part of this ecosystem, where we share what we see, what we are coming across, how we are handling things with our counterparts internationally, globally. Malware researchers are sharing details, sharing what they are seeing. And one is like, it's like all a collaborative approach. Of course, there are videos, of course, there are courses now which talk about offensive techniques, talks about how threats are spreading, how different operating systems are designed, and everything, all details are available out there. But at the same time, the the ecosystem has grown with the number of threads, but at the same time the speed of threads that infects, at the speed at which they infect the global ecosystem, then now it becomes a very crucial that how a particular 0 day is affecting somebody.
Yeah.
Is there a particular vulnerability that is being exploited, and how it is being exploited? All this information which is yet to become a part of some theoretical book or a video, these are the things that researchers currently collaborate, exchange, and then it has been published online in the form of blogs or white papers, and then gradually it becomes a part of education. So here I'll say the system and the whole ecosystem has matured quite good, and in a much better fashion, I'll say. And now the cybersecurity as a domain is become much wider, and it and much interesting, I'll say, at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and evolving very fast. And I'll say one of the most dynamic vertical in computers, which keeps on changing very fast, I'll say. Yeah.
The other thread being a little bit more technical, the shifting from again signature based patterns to something like the current wave of dynamic AI models and algorithms that maybe are used for penetration purposes. In that regard,
Hmm.
what comes into effect is this simultaneous chain of reactions where your action and reaction cycle has to be way quicker. You need to respond
Exactly.
effectively
Yes.
and you need to
Yes.
act even more effectively.
Hmm.
How exactly do researchers or industry folks right now are catering towards this sort of higher ask in terms of this greater vigilance in action and response?
So, see, as in these last 3 decades, as we've seen how threats have been evolving, and the number of threats that kept on growing, and then the kind of ecosystem of cybercrime has built up on the internet, which we call as dark web, and then how it has evolved, we have got into habit of thinking ahead actually. So whenever we see some kind of malicious activity or threat or something, we not only look at that threat as what we are seeing as currently, but at the same time we start anticipating how it's going to change or what next step it's going to do, because the way we have seen it over the years, that automatically brings that into things. So what we have done is, and we have been doing is that trying to imply all the earlier knowledge in the form of like data. We have trained the models, those are machine learning models, and we have trained those models to give us proactive indications, right, where it is going, how it is changing, and all that. So this is how most of the researchers are looking towards it. And the thing is, now with the inventions that are happening in AI in last 3 4 years, what we have observed is that earlier most of the ML related and technologies and AI ML related implementations were happening in cybersecurity protection side since long, like clustering the threats, creating detections, releasing proactive playbooks. Everything was like automated with the help of ML and AI, and the back end of the most of the cybersecurity vendors like us as well as any other. But then now, since AI related tools are easily available, made easily available since last 3 4 years, it is accessible to everybody, including the cyber criminals and the ransomware gangs that are out there, and they are making use of these technologies to define the next or design the next threat, which is much sophisticated, much difficult to catch, and the whole thing is become more sophisticated, wherein the threats are evolving on the fly with the help of AI, and this has to be tackled in the similar fashion. Now, means I am seeing that we are entering, or maybe we have already entered the phase of where the AI versus AI kind of war is happening on the cyber front on the internet actually. Yeah.
Mhm. What do these AI native malware or these AI adjacent powered attacks actually look like for somebody who does not particularly is versed with cybersecurity? What exactly do these things look like or work like?
See, I'll tell to explain this. I have to divide the. I'll give you some background. One
Mm.
is like how these there are so many threads that are coming daily and why they are growing like in exponentially. One, I'll divide the newer threats in three buckets. One bucket you can say as threats created by cyber criminals to do some cybercrime activity, and these cyber criminals also are this is a group, I'll say. So let's say it as a group A. Then there's a group B which we call as activists or attackers who are not doing any criminal activity, but they are doing illegal activity by uh, fighting for a cause,
Yeah.
defacing a website, or trying to stop certain deal, or maybe a climate change deal, or something like that. And then there's a group called, means I'll call that group as a group B, and then there's a group C, which is like very sophisticated, state-sponsored attackers group, which is like I'll say they are sponsored by some state, and they are nation-state supporting group, which are attacking or doing activities, and most of these activities are espionage, spying on
Mhm.
certain different nation, and monitoring their critical infrastructure, or maybe finding out their internal secrets, all that.
Yeah.
Now, if you see these three groups, cyber criminal activity and the group of state sponsored attack, which is A and C, have evolved to a very sophistication level, wherein on cyber criminal side I'll say there are gangs which we call, most of these are now moved towards ransomware. They select a target like bigger corporations. they study them, they enter the network, gradually move laterally, and then they perform the ransomware attack. Now, all these attacker or the gangs are evolved to the level where they have enough funding, but still there is some funding needed. By say for cyber criminals, they'll invest into the designing a new ransomware to the tune where they know how much it can be, they can earn out of that. But at the same time, if you look at state-sponsored attackers, now the budgets are like kind of almost unlimited, in the sense they have the state behind that, and the motivation is not cybercrime or money. The motivation is about it's all about national security and national approach. Now here there's a huge budget, as well as the sophistication of hardware and everything is very high. Here the attackers are much more aware about the latest technology and have access to that. Now if you see these attacks that are, I call them as attacks of cyber warfare, are more sophisticated, what I've observed, and then they are designed with the help of the latest AI algorithms that are available, and then it becomes very difficult to figure it out. Now what happens, these attacks are not like a normal attack. Whenever for example attacker wants to monitor a certain critical web power plant, say for example nuclear power plant, so they don't use any malware, they just start exploiting what are the weaknesses in their organization with respect to, it can be a email username password, or it can be a open port on some machine which is having admin access, and once they enter they just use genuine files, like they see malware will create a file or something and then they will try to exploit, but then these are caught by IDS IPS tools or an antivirus scanners. But then if something is genuine, which is a known tool, which is a clean or benign tool being used to do malicious activity, it becomes very difficult to detect, and that's where these kind of changes are happening in these attackers approach, especially in sophisticated things, and then they try to enter your supply your organization through supply chain networks or something. So these attacks, it's, I'll say, most invisible attacks. They sit into your organization for say weeks or sometimes months, just studying how your organizational internal networks work, how, who has which accesses, which permissions, and accordingly they take the next step after studying that access. So that level of sophistication is there. So if you see, one cannot see them, I'll say, when you are asking about how do you see that, and the thing is, it's, these are the most invisible attackers and attacks that are we are facing nowadays actually.
You again touched upon it a little bit, but from somebody who's into the field, into the domain, what exactly these cyber warfares look from the inside? Like, surely you are working with this infrastructure, with these architectures, with these frameworks day in and day out. On your end, it's somebody who's continuously working and working towards evolving
Yeah,
these cybersecurity frameworks.
yeah,
What goes into it?
yeah. It's a good question, and I'll say, and cyber warfare from inside, honestly, it feels like less like a single battle and more like a marathon or a firefight. I'll say the
Uh,
threats don't sleep; they keep on adapting on the fly, and you fix one hole and then 10 more pop up somewhere else. It's about exhausting and strangely energizing when you know that millions of people are dependent on you. So that's how it feels from the inside, I'll say. Yeah.
okay, maybe what is the most interesting thing that you are right now working towards or working with?
Right now, mostly, see, we have multiple teams, and in fact, a lot of things are happening in each of these verticals. See, for example, our team keeps track of certain gangs, what they are doing, certain ransomware gangs, how they are evolving, which tools they are using, what tools are being got attention. For example, we have to keep monitoring dark web, and on dark web, whatever activity happens, it's like the precursor to what is about to come actually. So we keep monitoring that, and what we are learning is that anything big is going to happen on any organization or in any nation, there are a lot of activities earlier they start on dark web, and that's where we are able to track, okay, if XYZ uh, entity on a dark web is buying XYZ tool, that means they are planning something for that. If somebody is looking for insight information about IoT device, that means a certain IoT device can be at risk in the coming future, and it depends on which gang is looking for which tool, and accordingly we track. So that's how, means that's how we look at it nowadays. It's like more proactive monitoring about what is available on dark web and how we can protect our users, what with whatever knowledge we have about it actually.
Uh, Two things again. Dark web is one thing, and then there's social media, both which
Mm-hmm.
are somewhat very slippery slopes in regard to these cybersecurity things.
Mm-hmm.
You really right now again mentioned, touched upon briefly the aspect of how these hacking attempts or mechanisms are mostly in regard to being well informed about your target, the individual
Hmm.
they're working, what do they do in general, their life, all of it. What are
Hmm.
your thoughts in regard to social media for somebody to safeguard themselves against such cybersecurity attacks or attempts?
Yeah, so see, social media monitoring and all related. What we have observed is that most of these attacks that are happening on social media are more towards social engineering and like impersonating somebody and trying to extract. It's more of a fraud or a scam.
Mm,
At the same time, lesser use of tools but more prominent use of social engineering. So here I will tell that you'll see, even if any ad that are coming on social media, popular social media, you
mm,
know there are quite a few,
mm,
and
mm,
this
mm,
popular social media, if you see the ads that we see, at least 30 to 40% of these ads are either scam or a fake related to fake products actually, and they are trying to lure user who are scrolling the social media based on their profile and identity. They are targeting the ads, and they are just hooking up with the select target by understanding the person who is on the social media. So those attacks are more less sophisticated, I'll say, but more social engineering oriented, and one has to, from a end user point of view, one has to be very careful. If you are more of a social media user, what you share or oversharing is not good, and that is what is being used against you, is what I will share tell. So most of the attacks and the most of the scams schemes that are happening, we have observed, are based on what your information is already available on the internet, in various forms, that is used against you to target you, and then you become a victim of the social engineering attack actually.
mm, yeah.
Social engineering works well only when the person who is trying to impersonate and reach out to you to scam you knows something about you much in advance, and you
Mm,
feel that he, how come that person knows that, so accordingly you start trusting that person. So he may talk about your parcel, he may talk about your travel, he may talk about your already booked some tickets, or if you are buying say for example a TV or something, and then you are searching on the social media about certain support for the TV or something. All these things are the most targeted, is what I have observed, and that's what our team has been observing. So here we keep on creating awareness among the consumers, is that don't overshare things on the in social media, don't share too much on social media, and of course you have to follow this cyber hygiene about having different passwords for your different accounts.
mm.
Don't repeat the password, don't and keep changing your password. All these things actually, I'll say. Yeah.
The other thing then maybe about the quantum side of things, with the
Hmm.
with let's say so much potency in
Hmm.
quantum technology in general and so much R&D being invested into it, especially quantum cryptography. How do you see that evolving or tying into the overarching cybersecurity narrative?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question, and quantum computing we all have been looking forward for, and certain developments have already happened, and in fact people have started using them. So when you look ahead, things get even more fascinating,
Mm.
because quantum, certain things are yet to come actually, and they are like little intimidating. Quantum computing, for example, everyone's excited about is power, like, but from security lens, it's like watching the walls of your current cryptography start to crumble. Like,
Yeah.
post quantum cryptography is going to be the backbone of resilience. Like,
Mm.
we need an algorithm that can survive the quantum computing or a qubit storm, I'll say.
Mm.
So the kind of encryption that we are currently using, the kind of transaction that the daily we take do on banking or whatever we share on social media, the kind of encryption that we are currently using is going to be very soon absolute, as soon as the quantum is easily available. Quantum is currently available, but it's so costly that very few people are having access to that. And we have seen that it really has the power to crack these encryptions in few seconds
Mm.
actually. So then there's edge computing, like billions of devices or IoT devices, the current encryption that they are using are becoming, it's going to become a potential vulnerability point after that. The future of defense will be about like sandboxing and anomaly tracing across like a planetary scale, I'll say.
Mm.
Imagine detecting an anomaly in a small device in a remote town and instantly correlating that signal across the globe. So that kind of speed and decryption is going to be a very easy for any cybercrime activity. So confidential computing and zero trust is something at the hardware level, is something that's going to be very crucial once we start seeing that actually.
Mm. Mm. One other thing, especially in regard to defense, I mean, with the
Mhm.
increasing integration and incorporation of autonomous and AI architectures. Now, surely in forms of physical things like drones, so on and so forth, but even in the future, maybe the inculcation of AI agents, software at the software side of things.
Hmm.
One very potent thing can be how do you actually defend their encryption and communication and so on and so forth, because I mean, we've got all these cybersecurity and cryptographic measures for the, again, the masses, the user end side of things. But particularly with AI, as very initial in the conversation we established that the threats themselves are ever evolving and at a significant rate. How do you make sure
Hmm.
that this entire defense architecture keeps on evolving in the same field, in the same pace, in the same field?
Yeah. So maybe you will find it theoretical, and currently we too are exploring. It's not like things are already we have achieved or somebody has achieved, but the kind of things that I am envisaging is like the defense has to be in the different level, where think of it like an immune system of humanity. Like one person, suppose in humanity, how it happens, if a one person catches a virus, develops antibodies,
Mm.
and instantly the whole species gets protected. Like
Yeah.
that's something we need to learn from the whole of humanity ecosystem, and we are not there yet.
Mm.
Digitally that needs to be designed, because that is something is going to be the level of defense that is needed, going to be needed when cyber criminals start using the most advanced AI techniques to infect, or the most fastest computers to uh, reach out to you. So all these things are going to be at a like a decision at to be a lightning speed. So that's
Mm.
where I'll say defense at the whole core, where it evolves with the help of learning on itself, is the something need of an hour, I'll say. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. The government as well, and in general, the private partnerships are being invited very ardently right now. That okay, people
Hmm.
who have got these ideas, these visions in different sectors and fields, they come up with their ideas, build their thing, and then they make the overall system more robust and more solid. What kind
Right.
of leadership then you expect to see in all these young folks and the youth that is coming up with these startup ideas, with these building these companies and organizations that are tackling different issues potent to defense, cybersecurity, so on and so forth?
So See, leadership in cybersecurity, it's not like leading any other industry, I'll say, because they are here, you are building while the fire is already burning, I'll say. Managing a SOC means like dealing with constant alerts or high stress, cognitive overload, like burnout is real.
Mm,
And
mm,
yet people show up because they know that the stakes are higher than themselves. So for me personally, the toughest balance for the leader, or the one who is looking as a himself on, upon himself for a cybersecurity vertical, the toughest balance has always been between being an engineer at the heart and being a leader who has to guide people, make decisions, and sometimes step away from the code. Like
mm,
what leadership really looks like during a cyber crisis, I'll say.
mm,
It's not about having all the answers. It's about like keeping yourself cool, calm when chaos erupts, like making quick but clear calls.
mm,
If somebody really has all these things in, then this is cybersecurity is the vertical, and this is the I'll say time for them to step into, because cybersecurity is not only about like having the best of engineering knowledge. It's all about also about psychological aspect, I'll say,
mm,
because I've gone through so many of the situations where it's end up into a bigger cyber crisis, and at that moment if you panic and start releasing, say for example, an update which is not properly tested or something, take time to just write a detection, and by the time things are like taken down to the level where you are not able to release updates, all these things are like very high pressure at a certain stage. So that psychological trust is an important, and uh, than any of I'll say a technical patch. I'll say I have been in situations where a customer's network was under live attack and the SOC was flooded with alerts. The
mm,
phone rings non-stop. Engineers keeping meals. The stress was so real, you could feel it like in the air. And suddenly the leadership wasn't like about its shouting or solution. It was about like calm the storm so that others could think clearly. Sometimes it's
mm.
not the code that breaks you, it's the pressure, I'll say. And I've seen brilliant engineers burn out, so simply because they never switch off, and that's the unseen battle behind the visible defenses, or the I'll say even the other side of the cybersecurity as a career, I'll say.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. There's again this new pattern emerging where now R&D and D and entrepreneurship are finding this intersection. So there are
Right.
more and more companies and startups and labs who are coming up with these ideas which are R&D demanding, R&D centric, but in an attempt to make it all industrialized. What exactly would you recommend? Because you started off in cybersecurity, which is very R&D intensive back when there was no infrastructure at all. So what would be your advice or suggestion or things that you would like to pass on to people who are starting up with these new endeavors in cybersecurity or in other tangential fields, trying to find this or balance this intersection between R&D and industry?
Yeah, and see, this is so apt question, I'll say, and because I have met a lot of founders as well,
Mm,
I keep meeting them, and the very challenge is at this crux. And you're right. Currently, we are seeing a lot of startups working on technologies which are more deeper into R&D, deep tech, and then also having investment angle to that. The point now I would like to make is that to all these founders is that many times I've seen these founders focus too much on perfecting the craft, like they keep on uh, designing the architecture to the level where it is ready for say like hundreds or thousands of customers, or handle the largest of the load or all that. But then from my point of view, that's not the approach one should take. One should always focus on build smaller, bring faster MVP, and try it on the customers, release it to the customers, fail fast, you will learn fast. Because see, people or customers maybe it consumers, or it can be a particular industry, unless you test your product out there, whatever crude fashion it may be at the stage, you will learn much faster than something that you keep on developing within your walls, like inside your lab, before having any customer onboarded or a pilot customer. That approach will take you longer, but with this current space of newer releases of AI models and all these things, time has become of a more important and more essence. So the faster you fail, the faster you will learn, the faster you will progress, and the faster you will come out with the product that is much adapted to the understanding of the users. So that's where I'll say fail fast, learn fast, and move fast. So release whatever the crude version you have. It can be zero point 0.5, can be 0.01, whatever. Release it, learn, and fail fast, learn fast is the approach one should take, I'll say.
There's also this new policy that you'd find new founders adopting, which is that build in public. Like simultaneously,
Hmm.
you are building your startup, your everything, and then simultaneously you are leveraging social media to garner validation, feedback in regard to whatever they
Of
are
course,
doing.
and yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
about that, your opinions.
yeah. So that's the right approach, I'll say. One is like that gives you instant validation. Uh, it also gives you insight into whether you are in the right direction. At the same time, it also helps you to build your personal brand and to the right audience. Like by the time you build something, you are also creating your own persona on social media, who is talking about the challenges and the problem and the pain point and how you are solving that. That really helps, because then somebody who has created that brand on social media is much easier to trust, and that's where it becomes easy for you to further validate the product once it is released, because you will find more users or willing supporters immediately through your followers actually. So that's the right approach. Community building is something that we call that, and that is the latest approach for all the startup one should take, I'll say. Yeah.
What are some other pitfalls that you see young founders or first time founders fall into? Like one you mentioned that okay, taking too much of time to perfecting the craft. What
Right.
other things?
Other thing is like, see, and this may be completely different because I came from a different background.
Hmm.
One is like I see current founders look for funding quite at early stage, like because they want to perfect it. It's all related. If as they want to perfect the craft, they look at the investment in a different fashion, and that's where they most of the startups that are coming out are looking for funding even before having customers onboarded actually, or profitability insight. Like it's become like much cooler to just raise funds is something I am seeing nowadays, and so that should be the pitfall one should avoid. I'll say you should focus on what you are solving, try to solve the problem, create a solution, bring some certain customers on board, get some revenue on board. Then you are, once you have proven that and you are shown that you can support these customers and still become profitable, that's the stage where you should look for the funding, and go, that funding should be used for scaling it further towards the larger market, I'll say.
I think one other very I'd say interesting bit about your profile is how you balance this sort of research rigor and research experience, development experience with the leadership and scaling the entrepreneurship aspect. In that regard, for people who are maybe coming from a technical background, because now again technical founders always they are scaling even more due to the inherent inculcation and integration of AI as a technology that you can just integrate.
Right.
How do you define a niche as a founder who's obviously technically skilled but also in this entrepreneurial domain?
Yeah, so since you're talking about how to identify a challenge which you think you can solve and then work on that, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So see, with this newer changes that are happening, the kind of innovations that are happening in AI. And currently, I'll say there's a lot of scope, especially for technical folks, I'll say, to start thinking in a completely different or out of the box approach. Where, for example, if there is a problem and there is a solution already out there, okay, now people are used to use that, and that's how it is being happening. But then now is the era where you can start thinking out of the box and start seeing ki, what if I develop the same solution now, but with the help of the latest innovations. If I start, for example, from my background, okay, if I have to write an antivirus or an endpoint security for enterprises from scratch, will I do it in the way that I did it 5 years back or 10 years back? No. With the latest new AI innovations that are happening, the new design will be completely different, and that's how the solutions and disruptors are designed, and that's how one should think, I'll say. So current times are the ones, I'll say, great times. One can create a solution that are currently already available in a completely new fashion from scratch using AI as the base, and you will come out with an amazing distributive technologies, I'll say.
Hmm. Personally, for you, if you weren't directly focused on solving the security side of things, what do you think would be something other that you may would have found to be interesting to solve or work upon?
So apart from security, if you are asking me, I'm more inclined, or I'll say more interested, and having more of a deeper uh, interesting at the same time understanding about the challenge is about the fintech
Mm,
vertical,
mm,
wherein like the kind of innovation that UPI has brought in India. I am seeing, I'm like of the opinion that there's a lot more to be done in that field, and that can be done at this stage. And it's like amazing field to be in. And I would have been in that field if I had not been into cybersecurity, I'll say. Yeah.
where do you see then fintech going towards in the upcoming future, and obviously cybersecurity moving, and sort of the overlap between the two? Because well, cryptography and cybersecurity again play a very pivotal role in finance even.
So, see, the way currently we are working towards, like in fintech, the kind of scams that are happening, the kind of
Mm,
frauds that are happening with common people, I think there's a much faster and much secure way of doing transaction should be designed and can be created, and it can be from the design itself. It will be so secure that coming out with a scam or creating a scam out of the technological fault will should be impossible. Of course,
mm,
social engineering kind of scams will happen, but then technologically things should be so easy to capture that it's like it should be very difficult for hackers or scamsters to crack or target a victim, I'll say. So that's where I'll focus my energies, and that's where a large scope is there out there for to innovate actually.
mm, I mean, similar to how UPI came up, it was something that is again way too novel and something that people wouldn't have expected India to come up with when it did.
Exactly.
In sort of similar repetition of that pattern, this entire new plethora of R&D centric initiatives, this entire attempt to just bring about something new, even if it's a little better, even a decimal point better than the previous iterations, I firmly believe that it is going to take us towards, in general, innovating at all. Like
Hmm.
how maybe a decade before, or maybe a little bit before back, things were more about conforming and reiterating blindly what was already being done, and there was this very minuscule minority who were attempting towards doing the unorthodox or trying new innovative approaches. Right now, with the current youth, I think that is being remagnified to a different level, where people are more focused on actually attempting to build out or carve out these unique independent sets of things, values that they can provide back to
Hmm.
the society, community, so on and so forth. But the problem then comes, at two levels.
Mm-hmm.
First, the infrastructure, and the second, the policy aspect. Where do you
Hmm.
see the in general world, different countries, so on and so forth, including India, at trying to mitigate this gap between policy infrastructure and the pace of innovation?
So I'll say at least there's a lesser gap on the policy side because the think tanks are thinking quite well in advance and trying to bring in the frameworks at the same time. But the pace at which things are being released, for the pace at which they are being discussed and concluded. For example, DPDP law, it's been discussed since almost more than 5 years, I'll say, or more than that, but it's still becoming a law. It's now becoming a law. So the the discussions, the plan has been there since long, but the approvals, the final decision, and the implementation is very slow. Maybe there are certain challenges at the government level. Maybe I am not
Mm-hmm.
having those
Yeah.
understandings. But the thing is, of course, there is a scope for these innovations on the front of faster releases of this thing. But on the infra side, I'll say I can give you one example. One, we are not thinking holistically. Example in the sense, when we started about this UPI, which was like more than even before pandemic, and I'll say, thank God we did that before that, so that we were ready for
True.
the online world after
Mm.
pandemic.
Mm.
So that really helped. But the kind of innovation that has gone into UPI has made everybody's life so easy. Now, earlier, for me to transfer some money to my friend or some vendor, I have to give check, and he used to take. I used to physically give it to him. He used to take to physically to the bank. It used to take few days or more to clear. And if he is from a different city, it used to take weeks. And if he's from a different country, it used to take more time. Now everything is of that has solved. There's RTGS, there's NEFT, there's like UPI. There are multiple options one can opt for, and everything is so faster. But then, have you thought of that? This is going to make job of cyber criminals as well easier. One can do things that fast because you have enabled those tools of online clearing, online things without seeing a person. Now the kind of activities that are happening on cybercrime has also caught up on those things, and they are doing things remotely. They are doing activities remotely. But then on the policy framework, even though we have a good laws, but on ground the level of infrastructure that is needed for the cyber crime enforcement, like cyber criminal cells which are there to protect the citizens and the corporations, they are not enabled with the kind of innovations that are needed to handle these kind of crimes. They are not having the same level of speed here, because now if you go to a police station in XYZ area and try to complain about a cybercrime that has happened to you, they are not having that kind of infrastructure to find out which city from where the attack happened and how it was done. All this, like, they are so backwards that it is going to take time for them to get up to date from the infrastructure. At the same time, human capital training as well, like
Oh
training them
yes.
to come to the level where.
Mm.
So now here I'm talking, we focused on faster transaction, we focused on digital and digital India, but we ignored the infrastructure part, and that's
Mm.
where I'll say one is big scope for innovation. At the same time, that unless that happens, the trust on the digital India or the trust on the online transactions will not go up further, because the kind of scams that we are seeing, the kind of things that currently the load that cybercrime department is facing is something that is overwhelming, and nobody is ready, I'll say trained to handle that. And that's the bad situation that we are into. And not only we, globally that's the situation, but now we are catching up with those things, and that's where we need to focus. Whenever a newer approach we are taking, we should think of each department holistically, how it's going to impact legal, how it's going to impact the on ground team, how it's going to impact the whole the law enforcement area. So every aspect needs to be thought while designing that. And so if you see the changes that are happening in fintech now is that people of banks are creating rules, or sorry, RBI is creating
Mm-hmm.
compliances and rules where banks have to tag the accounts as, like, for example, mool accounts, or a fake account, or a non KYC. All these are coming up now and they are catching up. And the catching up is not from everywhere. It's like RBI is focusing on banks, but then what about the telecom side? What about the, because this whole crime happens through a whole activity. The telecom is being involved, telecom infrastructure is being involved, banking infrastructure is being involved, and the users are targeted. So one has to think holistically, and if you think holistically and start implementing immediately, means continuously, you will be ready for the whole thing actually. So that will be much easier to trust, and that's what I think needs. There's a need of an hour, I'll say. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Agree. Agree to that. The one other aspect to for the again the young folks watching us, from all your experience, what are some principles that you just do not compromise upon?
Okay. So from early days until now, I still follow those principles. The very one important principle is about making sure that whoever customer trusts on me, he is satisfied completely. No matter what he buys from me, it can be a smaller, just a 500 pack of my antivirus, or it can be a much sophisticated firewall from my team. So no matter what kind or what size of customer he is, I have learned through, and I have grown only because of that, is that I make sure that whoever trusts me, I make sure that he is satisfied for what he's paying for. If he's not satisfied, I'm ready to repay him or refund him. Is I've inculcated the whole thing approach into my sales team and the support team and everybody out there. So that has really helped me, and that's my, I'll say, may the only and important principle that I follow actually.
Hmm. I think that is again one that is subsided a lot by the young founders or people who are not as experienced. They start off
Mm-hmm.
with it, but as things start to scale and expand, it becomes harder to keep track of it. I think you would agree when there are so many consumers, so many customers. But again, it's something that one must really keep taking up with them.
Yes.
And again, this is sort of the final segment that we do on the show. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you had to leave people with a message from this conversation, what exactly would be your word to humanity at large?
Okay, humanity as, I'll say, like, see, my message will be more towards startup founders, is because I more relate to them. Like, for young folks listening, my mantra would be like, stay curious, stay ethical, and never stop learning
Mm,
is something I'll always tell. Curiosity keeps you sharp, like ethics keep you grounded, and just like ethics keep you grounded, curiosity will always keep you sharp. So learning is the only approach that you'll have to. Even at this stage, I keep on learning. I don't feel that I have learned everything. I am like having so much of everything on my calendar is like half of the things are about learning new things, and learning keeps you alive in this field, I'll say. Yeah.
mm. That's good. That's really good. Dr. Sanjay Katkar, thank you so very much for agreeing to have this conversation. And I'm very, very sure and certain that people who will be turning in will be able to get immense value from it. Thank you so very much for
Yeah,
joining
yeah.
in.
I'll say thank you, Bhavya dear, and like to bringing on board me here, and having a conversation was really my pleasure actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay,